Have you ever thought that the packaging of the potato chips you buy in the future might turn black and white? It's not a change in design style. It's because of a Middle East war thousands of miles away from your home.
Yeah, it really sounds completely surreal when you put it like that.
Yeah.
A literal loss of color in our everyday lives.
It does. And well, welcome to our deep dive into the source material. We are looking at a stack of really fresh information today.
Right, including some deeply fascinating reporting from The Guardian.
Exactly. Reporting dated today, May 12, 2026. And our goal today is to understand how a geopolitical conflict is, actively erasing the color from our consumer goods.
It is wild.
It really is. We want to trace those invisible threads that link a distant war zone directly to your local grocery store aisle.
And we're going to do this by looking at the mechanisms behind the headlines. We need to look at how global events create these highly visible, highly unusual consequences on the products that you and I rely on every single day.
Okay, let's unpack this, because we have to go straight to the root cause of this crisis.
Yeah, the starting point.
Right, so the timeline really kicks off in late February of this year, 2026, with the outbreak of the Iran war.
And the immediate, physical consequence of that conflict was a blockade of the Strait of Hormuz.
Let's just visualize that for a second, because for anyone who doesn't track global shipping routes, the Strait of Hormuz is essentially a geographical bottleneck.
Right, a very tight squeeze.
Exactly. It is a very narrow waterway in the Middle East, and it just happens to be the world's busiest transit route for oil.
Narrow is really the key word there. I mean, it is the choke point for a massive percentage of the global energy supply.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so when a waterway like that is blocked, you aren't just delaying a few shipments, you are fundamentally choking off the baseline flow of crude oil to the rest of the planet.
And the information we are looking at highlights how this blockade specifically cut off the supply of a very important petroleum derivative, a chemical called naphtha.
Right, naphtha.
Simply put, naphtha is a liquid byproduct that comes from refining crude oil. But I want to make sure we understand exactly why this chemical matters to our daily lives.
Right.
Without getting bogged down in industry jargon.
Yeah, keeping it simple is best.
So think about it like this. Naphtha is basically the flour in a bakery.
Oh, that is a great way to put it. It is the foundational ingredient. Just as flour is the blank canvas for bread or pastries or pasta, naphtha is the blank canvas for modern manufacturing.
Right, because you cannot bake a cake without flour.
Exactly.
And manufacturers cannot make printing ink, they cannot make plastics, and they cannot make industrial solvents without naphtha. It's the starting point for almost everything synthetic you touch in a given day.
And because that base ingredient is suddenly trapped behind a blockade in the Middle East, well, the Asian markets have completely panicked.
I can imagine.
Yeah, naphtha prices in Asia have almost doubled since the war started in February.
Let me just pause on that. Double the price. Almost overnight. So basically what this means is that anything requiring plastic or ink just got wildly more expensive to produce.
Wildly more expensive.
And the numbers for Japan are particularly striking here. Japan relies on the Middle East for about 40% of its total naphtha consumption.
40% is just a staggering vulnerability, especially when you consider how modern supply chains actually work.
Right, but I have to play devil's advocate here for a second. If they lose 40%, they still have 60% coming from elsewhere, right?
Well, yes, technically.
So why the immediate crisis? It feels like they could just, scale back a little bit.
In theory, yes, you would think so. But we live in an era of what they call just-in-time manufacturing.
Okay, what does that mean exactly?
It means factories do not hold massive warehouses full of extra raw materials anymore. They order exactly what they need, exactly when they need it.
To keep costs down.
Exactly. So when 40% of your flour suddenly fails to arrive at the bakery, the entire production line grinds to a halt. You don't just bake fewer cakes, the machines literally stop running.
Okay, that makes the fragility feel a lot more real, which makes me wonder, when almost half of your raw material just vanishes, what does that actually look like on the ground for a major business?
It looks like panic.
Right. And this brings us to a massive, highly successful company that is being forced to bend to this new reality. Calbee.
Yeah, Calbee. For those who don't know, they are Japan's biggest snack maker. They absolutely dominate the market.
They really do. And they just announced that starting on May 25th, 14 of its flagship products are going to switch to monochrome packaging.
Black and white bags.
Exactly. The bright, eye-catching reds and yellows are just gone.
And to understand the gravity of this, we really need to look at the scale of Calbee. I mean, this isn't a small regional brand trying to save a few pennies.
No, not at all.
They had 322.5 billion yen in sales in 2025.
Let me just translate that for a second for our listeners. That is about 2.04 billion US dollars, or roughly 2.04 billion British pounds.
Right.
They are a titan.
Exactly. They are massive, and their history is incredibly telling here, too. Calbee was founded in 1949 in Hiroshima.
Right as the city was recovering from the atomic bomb.
Yes. They built themselves up literally from the ashes of the Second World War. They have spent decades expanding. They even acquired the UK brand Seabrook Crisps back in 2018.
So they are a global player.
Very much so. They know how to weather a storm. Yet, even with that deep history of resilience, the financial markets reacted pretty poorly to this packaging news. Following the announcement, Calbee's shares dipped more than 1%.
Which is a big deal for a company that size. But I have to ask this from the perspective of, just an everyday consumer.
Sure.
What does this actually mean for corporate strategy? A $2 billion company with global reach just accepts defeat and changes its iconic bags. Why not just eat the cost? Pay double for the ink, keep the colorful bags, and protect your brand identity.
It is a fair question, but the thing is, it is no longer just about the cost. It is about physical availability.
Oh, so it's not about money.
Right. Calbee stated this drastic move is literally the only way to maintain a stable supply of their actual food products. This isn't defeat. This is survival mode.
Wait, really? So you are saying the ink might literally not exist for them to buy regardless of price?
Precisely. If the naphtha supply is choked off, the refineries simply aren't producing the ink. You can't buy what isn't there. So Calbee had to look at their operations and make a very, very hard choice. Do they halt production entirely because they can't print a red bag?
Right.
Or do they prioritize the potato chips themselves and ship them in whatever material they can scrape together?
They're prioritizing the product over the presentation.
Exactly. They chose the plain bag. It is a highly practical, almost brutalistic response to a supply chain that is physically breaking down.
That puts it in a totally different light. It is not a design choice at all. It's a distress signal.
That is exactly what it is.
But, if a $2 billion snack giant is struggling this much to find basic materials, there is no way they're an isolated case. This has to be rippling out.
Oh, it absolutely is. The shockwaves are hitting entirely different industries right now. Take Mizkan, for example, a major food brand.
Okay, what happened with them?
They haven't just changed their packaging. They had to pause sales of some of their products entirely.
Wait, they literally pulled products off the shelves?
Yes, because they are facing a severe shortage of styrene containers.
Styrene. Let me guess, another byproduct of naphtha.
Spot on. It is a rigid plastic used for food packaging. And for the products Mizkan can still actually manage to package and sell, they have been forced to raise prices across the board.
Okay, so basically it's a domino effect.
Exactly.
Food packaging is taking a massive hit, but it goes way beyond the grocery store, doesn't it? The reporting notes that auto giants like Toyota and Hyundai are feeling the exact same squeeze.
Yeah, the auto industry is really suffering.
Their profits are being eaten away by rising material costs, and they are dealing with dropping sales at the exact same time.
Because when you think about a modern car, think about how much plastic is involved.
Oh, right.
The dashboard, the bumpers, the interior components, all of that traces back to the exact same petrochemical supply chain that is currently blocked in the Middle East.
It's all connected. And it isn't just naphtha, is it? We are seeing a broader squeeze on essential manufacturing supplies that rely on similar maritime routes or extraction processes.
Yeah, it's a systemic issue.
Like we are reading about sudden shortages of helium and incredibly tight supplies of heavy fuel.
The heavy fuel issue is particularly disruptive right now.
I want to focus on that for a second.
Yeah.
Because the sources mentioned that just this past March, there was a quiet panic among fans of a different crisp brand.
Oh, yeah, the factory shut down.
Right, production temporarily stopped. And it wasn't because of a potato shortage. The factory literally could not procure enough heavy oil to run its machines.
Which is terrifying for a manufacturer. Heavy oil is essentially the sludge at the bottom of the crude oil refining process.
Okay.
It is what fires the massive industrial boilers in these factories. No heavy fuel, no power. The machines just go cold.
So if I'm visualizing this, it's almost like a biological system shutting down.
How so?
Well, naphtha is like the bone marrow producing the cells, right? The
Right.
plastics and the inks. But the heavy fuel is the heartbeat. It's the brute energy keeping the body moving.
That is a really great analogy.
And right now, the global manufacturing body is struggling on both fronts.
It is, from the delivery trucks that rely on fuel, to the styrene containers holding the food, down to the ink on the labels. The entire organism is under severe stress.
Which brings us to a much larger question. Because if individual companies, even massive ones like Calbee and Toyota, can't fix this on their own, how are entire nations responding to this?
The macroeconomic response is really where you see the true scale of the panic. The Japanese government has actually had to step in directly. Yeah, there was an emergency television bulletin issued by Ki Sato, a senior government spokesperson.
An emergency government broadcast, just to talk about ink and plastic. That alone tells you everything about the severity of the situation.
It really does. And his mandate was clearly to prevent public panic. He stated that there are no immediate supply disruptions for ink on the consumer level.
Okay, well, that's good news, right?
Well, the reason they are holding steady is entirely temporary. Japan is currently burning through its stockpiled crude oil reserves just to keep the domestic refineries operating.
But a stockpile is just a buffer.
Exactly.
I mean, it buys you a few months, maybe. What is the actual long-term fix here if the Strait of Hormuz remains blocked?
Well, right now, they are actively scrambling to redraw global trade routes. Japan has tripled its naphtha imports from non-Middle Eastern routes in May.
Tripled?
Yes. They are specifically looking to places like the United States to fill that massive gap left by the blockade.
Wait, hold on. Logistically, how does that even work? You can't just, snap your fingers and teleport chemicals from Texas to Tokyo.
You certainly cannot.
You are talking about booking massive tanker ships, sending them across the Pacific Ocean, dealing with Panama Canal limits, or going around entire continents.
Yeah, it's a logistical nightmare.
The shipping times alone must be drastically longer.
The transit time is significantly longer, yes. And the freight costs are astronomical compared to the relatively short trip from the Middle East to Asia. You are completely upending decades of optimized trade routes.
So even if they secure the naphtha from the U.S., it is going to cost a fortune, which inevitably gets passed down to the consumer anyway.
Exactly. And this scramble reveals the extreme, terrifying fragility of the entire global manufacturing ecosystem. Because if Japan is struggling this much to reroute its supply chain, imagine what is happening in China.
Right. This is the critical piece of the puzzle, because China is the world's largest manufacturing nation. They are the factory of the world.
And they are just as dependent, if not more so, on Middle Eastern oil and petrochemicals to fuel that factory.
So they are standing in the exact same danger zone. If Japan is missing 40% of its flour, China is facing a very similar massive deficit for its own bakeries.
They're facing the exact same rising material costs, the exact same packaging shortages, and the looming threat of their sprawling industrial centers slowing down because they physically cannot acquire the base ingredients.
Wow.
China is walking a razor-thin tightrope right now, desperately trying to diversify its own import routes.
And why this matters to the listener, why this matters to you, is because China manufactures a huge percentage of the world's exports.
Almost everything we buy.
Right. So if China's factories slow down, the domino effect we talked about earlier doesn't just hit a snack aisle in Tokyo. It hits electronics in London, medical supplies in New York, auto parts in Berlin.
Your vulnerability is entirely shared across the globe.
Let's take a moment to pull all of these threads together.
Good idea.
We started with a geopolitical conflict breaking out in late February. That war led to a physical blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. And that single choked waterway immediately cut off the global supply of invisible chemical ingredients.
Specifically naphtha.
Right, the chemical that our modern society is entirely built upon.
And because of that artificial scarcity, prices doubled in a matter of weeks.
And because prices doubled and physical supply vanished, multi-billion-dollar titans of industry like Calbee are being forced to strip the bright, vibrant colors from their packaging.
Yeah.
They're making their products black and white just to ensure they can afford to keep actual food on the shelves.
It really forces us to confront a very uncomfortable reality about our hyper-globalized world.
It does.
Nobody is isolated. The cost, the availability, and even the physical, visual appearance of the everyday items sitting inside your house right now.
Heavy thought. The next time you walk down a grocery store aisle and pick up a perfectly normal, brightly colored product, ask yourself, how many fragile, invisible global threads had to remain perfectly intact just for that single item to reach your hands?